welcome to another Municipal Focus. I'm your host, Kevin Tocci, and we are utilizing this particular program this very day to talk about something very close to home, and that is the finances of one of the communities that we serve, which is Whitman and Hanson. We have joining us as a guest today to give us some insight on a community meeting that's going to be taking place on August 15th. It's a Wednesday night. It's going to be held at the Whitman Town Hall Auditorium. And we have the Town Administrator, Frank Lynam, here to chat with us. Frank, welcome back to Whitman Hanson Community
Thank
Access.
you. Appreciate it.
Talk to us about organizing this community assessment meeting. It's going to be held on the 15th.
Well, for anyone following town affairs and for lack of any other thing to do, watching the selectmen's meetings, tongue-in-cheek, I say that. Certainly, there's an awareness that we have some concerns going forward from a municipal finance point of view for the town of Whitman. When we held our annual town meeting in May, I made an opening statement, which I rarely do. And in that statement, I informed the voters that were present that we were essentially pulling out all the stops to fund the fiscal FY19 budget, the budget year we're in right now.
Yep.
I also noted that the amount of money that we voted was not sustainable, that even with a level funded budget next year where no budget increased by any amount of money, we would have a structural deficit, certainly in excess of $800,000 and probably closer to $1 million. And there are a lot of reasons for that. We have seen growth in costs and expenses throughout the municipal budget. Education is increased dramatically over the last few years. Mm-hmm. All three school systems that we participate in, Whitman Hanson, South Shore of Oak, and Norfolk Agricultural School, each had increases in excess of 10%. Not a very sustainable number when you consider that aside from taxable land growth, our revenues increased by 2.5% a year. The purpose in calling for the meeting that we are hosting on August 15th is to begin a process of evaluating from the point of view of the stakeholders, the citizens of Whitman, and its department operations, an opportunity to analyze what we have, what we feel we need going forward, and what kind of future people see for the town. It's really important to get a sense from the community we serve. Everyone living in Whitman has a vested interest in what we do and how we do it. We don't know whether there are strong preferences on the part of the community to invest in one area and perhaps not in another, or what their idea of Whitman going forward should be. So the meeting on August 15th will invite those stakeholders to come and participate in the first of a series of evaluations that we will be doing with the assistance of Dr. Tarsi, who is an educator at Bridgewater State University, to develop a questionnaire, a survey that we can send to the Whitman residents and businesses and tell us what's important to you. What do you think is needed? Where do you see Whitman going in the next several years? Obviously, a big part of that focus will be financial because the operations of the town are funded by its citizens. I've put together a few numbers just to give people an idea of where we were, because it helps us to figure out where we're going. There's a chart up on my right that has a number of bits of information in it. The first one, the upper left chart, shows the progression of property values for the town of Whitman. In a healthy town, you're typically seeing property growth and assessment growth from year to year. And certainly Whitman was no exception. In 2004, the combined value of all land in Whitman was $916,397,000. In 2018, it's $1,525,857,000. And our estimate for 2019, which hopefully will become a number in early or mid-September when the assessors are done with their evaluation process, I expect will be $587 million, I'm sorry. So there's health there, there's growth there. But we had a stretch of time from 2008 to 2015 where we actually saw properties drop dramatically in value. And I'm sure people who bought or sold during that time have a vivid memory of it. And that was nationwide, it wasn't just local. But that is part of what has an impact for the town.
Kind of a ripple effect, so to speak?
Sure. For example, in 2009, the combined value of property in Whitman dropped by $79 million. Conversely, in 2016, it increased by $107 million. Now, those numbers don't necessarily affect what we gain in tax revenue. Taxes are calculated based on assessed value, but have built-in limits.
Right.
The most obvious limit is Proposition 2.5. Passed in the early 80s, it limits growth from year to year in the tax burden by 2.5%, and that's dollars. You can exceed that number, but to do so, you actually have to present a request to the voters who have to vote at a town election to allow you to exceed that 2.5%. So what does that mean? As you look at our expenditures, what it cost us to do business from year to year, we're limited by that 2.5% cap, and we rarely hit it. We're typically 100,000, 150 below that limit. But that's a result of calculating all of the values after the reassessment and after we look at all the revenues that come in. We've had, for example, in 2013, our budget increased $88,000. I'm sorry, our growth increased by $88,000. That same year, our budget levy increase was $958,000. So they don't run hand in hand. We've had some good years and we've had some bad years. In 2016, we had a very unusual event. The National Grid electric company made a substantial investment in upgrading its facilities. That upgrade led to growth of $1.3 million in taxable revenue for that year. Unfortunately, it's personal property growth. It doesn't retain. It amortizes very quickly. In the last 3 years, that $1.3 million is down to less than $800,000.
If I could ask, you look at the ratio between commercial and residential, Whitman has a relatively small commercial base, right? Isn't it almost like 92% to maybe 8% or somewhere in that area?
Almost 90% of the tax revenue that we generate in Whitman comes from residential properties. And that has an impact on us because we can't necessarily control certain areas of expense growth. Example, utilities, health insurance, public employee retirement insurance, OPEB, other post-employment benefits. All of these costs accelerate from year to year, and they're in the 5 to 8% increase area. And you also have personnel costs. Contracts are negotiated year after year, and there are costs associated with that. Recently, we added 4 firefighters to the Whitman Fire Department. First time in over 40 years, almost 50 years, I think, that we actually increased staffing there. By and large, we have not done much to increase our staff. We have pretty much managed with the help that we have. We have a regional school system, and they have their own unique challenges from a education standpoint, and they experience the same issues of budget growth that we experience. They have the same controllable and non-controllable expenses. So all this brings me back to what we talked about at our town meeting in May, that we're going to have to work over the next several months to develop a vision and a plan for Whitman for the future. Because our first big challenge is going to be establishing a budget for fiscal year 2020. Now that sounds far away. I mean, a month ago, we closed the fiscal 18 year.
Right. We
are currently in the fiscal 19 year, which is July 18 to June 19. And we're already talking about
2020.
Fiscal 20. Yeah. And the reason we're doing that is we have to start planning now in order to understand what those needs will be and what the people of Whitman want to prioritize.
What do you want to do in regards to get a message out here? Because I know one of the toughest things is to try to get enough bodies to town meeting or special town meeting. Can you kind of express how dire it is that folks show up with ideas to participate in the conversation, so that at least if there's enough hands on deck, you guys, maybe somebody might come up with an idea or a series of ideas that could help long term?
Well, that's the whole purpose of this first meeting. We don't necessarily know, as community leaders, we don't necessarily know what people want to see in our community. And there's only one way to find it out, and that's to ask the questions. Right. As you alluded to, it's very difficult to get people to participate in annual elections and annual town meetings.
However,
they're just...
But I have to say, though, when's the one time that we usually see people flock to town meeting? When's that? When is usually do we see it? When we're talking about line item number 2, I think a couple of years ago, you're talking about having 2 different line item number 2s, depending on...
Yeah, we're never going to do that again.
But the idea is when folks are concerned about education, and they're concerned about whether little Johnny and little Sally are going to get their the town's money's worth for an education, they show up and they want to make things happen. Other than that, we're lucky if we see the 150, 200 people that we need, and that pales in comparison as to, we get 10,000 registered voters in town?
Yep, we do. The town meeting is I guess for lack of a better word, a throwback to when the area was first settled. Communities took care of their own. They did everything in an organized way, and everybody participated. It wasn't that many years ago that we would have 300 to 400 people at a town meeting. And at that time, it was probably out of 8,000 or 9,000 citizens. Today, it's a challenge to get 150 people to turn out for the special within the annual. Our annual town meeting quorum is only 50 voters. Think about that. 50 voters can determine, at least for the next 12 months, the future of the town simply by turning out an annual town meeting and voting. I mean, that's a scary thought.
What's the last census? Is it 14? How many thousand?
There's
14,000 people.
800 people in Whitman.
50 people making decisions for 14,000 people. Nearly 15,000.
It adds a whole new meaning to those who show up, make the decisions. So we're not looking to hold a typical town meeting where we're asking people to vote and we're asking to change bylaws and do things like that. This is a community meeting. This is inviting the residents of Whitman that are available and interested, and the business community that's available and interested, to come to a meeting at the town hall where we're going to talk about how we frame a survey that is going to have significant impact on the future of the town. This is the opportunity for people to participate, tell us what they think, and in that setting, that's not going to be the point where the decision is made. That's the point where we decide what questions to ask, because we need to hear from the community. And 150 responses are not a good indication of the interests and values of the town of Whitman. You know, we have historically strongly supported public safety, education, community operations. I think back less than 20 years ago, we, through the efforts and assistance of June O'Leary, obtained a grant for $300,000 to take a town park, which was pretty run down, and restore it. We brought back the reflecting pond. We put walking paths in the park that previously were just stumble lines. We were able to develop a recreation area, playground for the kids. We have a softball field there, and we put in a replacement pool. We did things that really identify what communities need, recreational areas, for example. In education, we've come a long way from the days before we were regionalized in terms of providing quality education to our children. We've increased our police staff by 2 to 3 people over the last 20 years. And think about that, that's 20 years. And again, we increased our fire department by 4 employees. So we now have 6 employees on each shift. And they provide a remarkable level of emergency medical service to the town.
Right.
From the time a call is made to the time someone's on the scene attending to somebody in need is literally a few minutes, and sometimes less than a minute, depending on when and how it happens. I mean, that's phenomenal. How many communities can say they do that?
Not many.
So our question is, what's important? What do you, as a citizen of Whitman, feel should be our priorities and our focus? Do we need more fields? Do we need more support in the public safety sector? Do we need more education support? Quality of life issues.
And you want to balance that out because while you may add more in one area, you might have to take away or lessen in others in order to, again, balance this all out for the long term, right?
Well, and sometimes this becomes a quid pro quo, this for that. In order to have
Right. Trade-offs.
this particular service, we may have to curtail in this area.
Correct.
Another area that I'm very interested in is ideas on what we can do for revenue. You know, I got involved in the town with the finance committee in 1993. And my mantra then was, we have to get more business in town. I became a selectman in 1996. My mantra was, we need to get more business in town. I took a break from the town. I was away for a year and a half. Circumstances came together, and there was an opportunity for me to come on board as a town administrator, the second town administrator for the town. And I very gladly accepted that opportunity. And I said, we got to find ways to bring more business into town. The problem is we're a community that's not readily serviced by major arteries or roads.
Like Route 24 or
Which
Route 3,
means
right?
large businesses are looking to be closer
Right.
to those arteries and networks.
All logistics.
So we have to focus on what we can do. We have some local stores. We have a little downtown area that's thriving. It's healthy. We certainly don't want to see any loss in that area. We have some room on the east side of town to develop some business. I had a great idea of promoting the area by the railroad tracks that used to be Grossman's. It's a property that's in tax taking and has been in tax taking for 88, almost 30 years.
Goodness.
The reason we haven't taken it is there's contamination and we didn't want to be responsible for cleaning it up. The EPA came in, did some work with it, put a little over $1 million into it, and they better identified the areas that still need to be dealt with. I did seek and get some money in a grant to quantify what was there. And I had some discussions with a large supermarket chain with the hopes of being able to bring them into that location. The final task was identifying the size of the property and what we could do with it. Well, out of the 17 acres, all but 3.5 are wet. So as a result of that, it's not something we can build on the way I would like to.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean we can't attract something there. And in order to do that, we are ultimately going to have to foreclose on that property. But it could be a small business development, and that's really what we have available to us right now. You know, this is the high-tech segment of the marketplace now. The new businesses opening up are either tech-related or health-related. Mm-hmm. So hopefully we can draw some of those industries into the town that could fit into the areas that we have and the opportunities we have. Every time I say we've maxed out and we've hit our growth point, a new development comes. There was a project approved on Temple Street years ago. Would have been a affordable housing project. It never came together. A local developer has come back into the marketplace with that, and they're going to be holding some hearings at the Board of Appeals to approve a subdivision. We'll be bringing in more property to the tax rolls. Since it's residential, we'll also be increasing our educational costs. So we need to find a balance.
Right.
In any event, what we really need is for people to communicate with us. Tell us, what do you want to see? So I would hope within the next 60 days, a survey will be sent out to all households. And it'll be done a couple of ways. It'll be done in paper. It'll be done electronically. People can drop things off at the town hall. But we'd really like to hear from people and tell us, what are your thoughts? What does Whitman mean to you? Where do you see us going? Because in order for us to do our job, we need to know where the community wants to go.
We got less than 4 minutes left here in this program. Anything that we haven't touched upon, any information up on the charts that behind me here that you want to make sure that folks are aware of, that we could show that at least can kind of give proof positive as to their need to attend this event. Again, happening on August 15th. It's a Wednesday night, 7 p.m., Whitman Town Hall, right on South Avenue, right up the street from local cable, in the auditorium, if you would.
We talked about numbers. I know people's eyes start to gloss over when you start talking numbers. Unfortunately, that's half my life. But we look at the indicators. Tax levy increases. People would be very surprised to find that several years in the last 15, our taxes actually went down. People would be surprised perhaps to know that the capital expenditures that we make that help us to keep our investments in the town growing are pretty regularly a part of our annual budget. In the last 4 years, that's 15, 16, 17, and 18, we invested $1.3 million, $2 million, $1.5 million, and with a vote to replace water meters and water mains, $5 million in 2018. So we are investing in our community, and that's important. You can't stand still. You either go backwards or you go forward. We'd like to move forward.
If folks have any questions in regards to the upcoming date, the 15th, or if they want to share information, are you looking for that beforehand or just that night? How can they get in touch with town hall officials?
This is a building, this is a plan to construct a survey. So it really would be more helpful to start on the 15th, but I always welcome comments from any citizen. You can reach out by phone. Our number at the Selectman's office is 781-618-9701. If you want to email the town a general question, you can use the email info at whitman-ma.gov, or just stop in.
It's that easy.
It's that easy.
Definitely that easy. Well, I want to thank you for coming and sharing this information.
I appreciate the time.
And we'll look forward to seeing you at this particular event again, August 15th. It's a Wednesday evening, 7 p.m., Whitman Town Hall, the auditorium. Plenty of seats. Bring your ideas and participate in this first step of many in trying to financially get the town going in the right direction for the long-term success of it. With Frank Lynam, of course, my name is Kevin Tocci. Until next time, you've been watching Municipal Focus.